Tuesday morning was when the Valtrine Empire came. People had seen it coming for weeks, but no one on Earth was ready for what came next. Without warning, their huge ships appeared in the sky. The sun was shining on New York City 1 second, and the next second everything was dark. There were huge metal ships in the air that were so big that they blocked out all the light. The same thing happened in every major city in the world, including London, Tokyo, Paris, Mumbai, and others. Everywhere people looked up, they saw alien ships filling the sky like dark clouds that would never go away. The governments of Earth had known that something was going to happen. 3 weeks before the aliens came, scientists saw their fleet. Telescopes picked up strange signals and radar systems went crazy with readings they had never seen before. World leaders had to meet in secret to deal with the situation. They fought and made plans hoping for the best. Every country's military got ready for war. Soldiers were told to get ready, weapons were readied, and defense systems were put on high alert. People prayed in homes, churches, mosques, temples, and other places around the world. They prayed in many languages including English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, and many more. They prayed for safety, mercy, and a miracle that would keep them from what was about to happen. Parents held their kids close and told them everything would be fine, even though they didn't believe what they said. But in the end, none of it mattered. The Valtrine had been looking at Earth for a long time, 60 years. They had gotten into radio, TV, and internet communications. They looked at everything that people sent into space. They looked at military parades and weapons shows. They watched news stories about wars and fights between people from different countries. They looked at political speeches and reports on the economy. After watching closely for 60 years, the leaders of Valtrine came to a simple conclusion that sealed the fate of Earth. People were not very advanced. The weapons were old. Compared to what the Valtrine had, the technology was laughably simple. More importantly, people were split up. They fought over things like borders, resources, religions, and ways of thinking. There were hundreds of countries, thousands of cultures, and billions of people who couldn't agree on anything. The Valtrine thought Earth would be easy to catch. The perfect planet to add to their growing empire. Once they were properly broken and controlled, the humans would be great workers. That Tuesday morning, the war started and lasted for 3 weeks. It wasn't really a war at all. It was more like killing everyone. The armies of Earth threw everything they had at the attackers. Fighter jets screamed through the sky, firing missiles at the ships from space. The missiles flew straight and true, thanks to their perfect guidance systems. Then they hit the Valtrine shields and blew up without doing any damage at all. It was like throwing stones at a tank. The alien technology was so advanced that nothing on Earth could even get through their defenses. The Valtrine response was quick and harsh. The energy beams that came from their ships cut through the air like lightning made of pure death. Fighter jets that cost millions of dollars to build fell from the sky like burning leaves in the fall. Weapons that pilots never saw coming killed them in seconds, even though they had trained for years. Ground troops did not do any better. 50-ton tanks were turned into pools of molten metal. Soldiers with rifles fought enemies who had plasma weapons and energy shields. It was like sending knights from the Middle Ages to fight a modern army. The Valtrine leaders didn't pay much attention to the human resistance. Before Earth, they had taken over 12 other planets. This was normal work for them. Getting rid of people was the same as getting rid of pests from a warehouse before bringing in new equipment. Like rats fight back when you corner them, they thought there would be some resistance, but they knew it wouldn't last long. City after city fell. Governments fell apart or went into hiding. People destroyed or took over communication networks. The internet went out. The phones stopped working. Television stations stopped broadcasting. The infrastructure that linked the modern world was methodically taken apart. In just 2 weeks, people were back to the Stone Age when it came to talking to each other and getting things done. It was over by the 21st day. Every important government in the world had either given up or stopped existing. The President of the United States was dead. He was killed when the White House was destroyed in the first hour of the invasion. The Prime Minister of the UK was hiding somewhere and couldn't lead the remaining British troops. The leaders of China, Russia, India, and every other country were either dead, in jail, or on the run. The Valtrine set up control centers in the ruins of cities that used to be human. They picked the tallest buildings that were still standing and turned them into command posts. From these places, they could keep an eye on the remaining humans and tell their troops what to do. They only needed 10,000 soldiers to keep 8 billion people in line. The aliens knew that once you break a species' will to fight, you don't need a lot of guards to keep them in line. They started to make a list of all the things that people own. Which people had useful skills. Which ones could have been worked to death in labor camps. What resources did Earth have that were worth taking? The Valtrine were good at taking over. They had done this before and knew exactly how to do it. They wanted to have Earth fully integrated into their empire in a few months. It would be just another worker planet making things for their civilization. Commander Vareth was on top of what used to be the United Nations building in New York City. The Valtrine had turned it into their main command center for North America. He looked out over the broken skyline and felt good about it. There were still dozens of fires burning in the city, and smoke was still rising from them. It was just rubble and twisted metal where buildings that had been there for 100 years used to be. There were only Valtrine patrols and groups of humans running from one hiding place to another like scared mice on the streets. Vareth thought this was easy. A lot easier than taking over Draxia Prime 3 years ago. At least the Draxians fought hard for 2 months before giving up. The people had given up in 3 weeks. They were weak, disorganized, and honestly sad. Vareth had taken over 3 planets by now, and Earth was by far the least impressive. He made a note in his head to ask for a harder job once the occupation was fully in place. This was pretty boring. But even though Vareth was bored and thought he was better than everyone else in New York, something was going on 2,000 miles away that would change everything. In government records. It had never been photographed by satellites because it was buried under hundreds of feet of solid rock. Most of the military officers who had worked there were already dead, and they took the secret of where it was with them when they died. This bunker has been running for 70 years thanks to emergency power. Solar panels that were hidden on the mountain's surface sent electricity to backup batteries that were deep underground. The systems were automated so they could work for 100 years without any human help if necessary. They had been waiting patiently, using secret sensors and satellite feeds to keep an eye on the world above that no one knew about. Rows of cryogenic chambers lined the walls of a lab that was sealed off by steel doors that were 3 feet thick. These were advanced freezing machines that were meant to keep bodies in suspended animation for an indefinite period of time. There used to be 12 chambers and each one had a volunteer for Project Titan in it. Back in 2025 when the project was still going on, that was 70 years ago. Over the years 11 of the chambers broke down. The systems broke down one by one because of power outages, mechanical problems, and just getting older. The bodies inside had thawed and died, their dreams of serving their country ending in a dark place where no one would ever find them. It was a sad end for people who had signed up for something they thought would help humanity. But one room kept working. The engineers who made it made sure that every system had 3 backups. One pump stopped working and another one took over. A backup turned on when a sensor stopped working. This last chamber hummed softly in the dark, doing its job of keeping its occupant frozen and alive. Project Titan was inside that chamber, frozen in sleep for 70 years. Not the project itself but what it had made. A person who had become something more than a person. Something that scientists and generals in the military made and then decided was too dangerous to ever use. The project was so controversial and scary for the future of war and humanity that it was kept secret even from the highest levels of government. The files were hidden, the building was hidden, and everyone who worked there was told to keep quiet or quietly left their jobs. The man in the chamber had agreed to go in knowing he might never wake up. He had signed papers that gave the government permission to change him at the genetic level, make him stronger, and turn him into a weapon that no one had ever seen before. Then the project was cancelled, and he was put to sleep with the promise that he would be woken up if his country ever needed. The day had finally come. Even the project scientists had forgotten about the protocols that had been programmed into the chamber's backup systems. Deep learning algorithms, which were the most advanced technology in 2025, had been put in place to keep an eye on global communications and figure out what threats there were to humanity. For 70 years, these systems had been watching and waiting, taking in everything that was going on in the world above. When the Valtrine ships showed up on sensors 3 weeks ago, the automated systems knew what was going on. This was a threat that could have wiped out all life. The protocols were made to find situations like this one. The automated systems made a choice without anyone telling them to. They started the sequence for waking up. The process of thawing had begun. It would take weeks to safely bring a human body back from deep cryosleep without hurting it. The systems worked slowly, raising the temperature by 1 degree at a time and slowly getting blood to flow again so that the frozen organs could work again. It was a sensitive process that couldn't be rushed. The Valtrine were happy about their easy win and started enslaving people. Meanwhile, deep in the Colorado mountains, something they didn't know about was waking up. Something that would show them that not taking people seriously was the worst thing they had ever done. The last chamber kept working quietly, and with each passing hour, the person inside got closer to waking up. Project Titan would soon open his eyes to a world that had changed a lot in the last 70 years. Aliens took over the world because they thought humans were weak and they were about to find out how wrong they were. In the dark, Dr. Emily Brooks was running for her life. Every breath she took made her chest hurt. She couldn't stop even though her legs felt like they were on fire. The sound that haunted her dreams was behind her. The high-pitched whine of Valtrine patrol drones cutting through the night air. They were looking for her, and every second they got closer. She ran with a broken tablet computer held tightly against her chest. It was the last piece of real technology she had. During the invasion, everything else had been taken or destroyed. Her life was very different 3 months ago. Emily was a scientist at MIT, one of the best universities in the world at the time. She studied the biology of aliens, which was funny because real aliens had come and destroyed everything. She had a job, coworkers, students, and a future. She had been thinking about what life might be like on other planets in a theoretical way. She was just another refugee now. Another person running away from the aliens that had turned Earth into a huge prison camp. She had not been able to wash her clothes in weeks, so they were dirty. Her hair was dirty and knotted up. She had lost 15 pounds because there wasn't much food. The successful scientist was no longer there. There was a scared woman in her place who was trying to make it through another day. Emily had been going west for 2 weeks with a small group of other people who had survived. At first there were 5 of them. She was alone now. Others had been caught by Valtrine patrols or had just gone missing during the night. She didn't know if they were dead or captured, and she tried not to think about it too much. She wanted to give up when she thought about it, but she couldn't afford to. They had been following rumors of a secret base for the resistance in the Rocky Mountains. People who survived talked about it in the camps and places where they were hiding. A place where people were fighting back. A place where you could find food, weapons, and safety. Emily didn't really believe the rumors, but what else could she do? Staying in the cities meant they would definitely be caught. The Valtrine were capturing people and sending them to work camps. She had heard stories about what went on in those camps. Stories that made her sick and made her hands shake. She had gone west toward the mountains, hoping the rumors were true. Not at all. The rumors said there would be a resistance base, but there wasn't one. There was nothing but empty wilderness and the constant threat of alien patrols. But something else had brought her to this exact spot in the mountains, even though she didn't know what it was. She had military files on the tablet she was carrying that she had found 3 weeks ago. She had been hiding in an empty government building, looking for food or supplies, when she found a computer server that still had backup power. Most of the information was either broken or too hard for her to decrypt. But she was able to get some files out, and those files had a phrase that kept coming up. Emergency Protocol Active for Project Titan, Colorado Site 7. She didn't know what Project Titan was. The files only gave her bits of information, not the whole thing. Something about a test in the military. Something about changes and improvements. The files had dates from 2023 to 2025, which was 70 years ago. But that last part, Emergency Protocol Active, was new. The timestamp said it had turned on 3 months ago when the Valtrine attacked. Emily was a scientist. She knew how to look into mysteries and follow the evidence. Every instinct told her that Colorado Site 7 held something important. Something that could be good for people. There was a small chance, maybe even a foolish one, but it was all she had. She had come to these exact coordinates in the mountains looking for something she couldn't even name. It seemed like that search was going to get her killed. The drone fire got worse. She could hear the energy weapons charging up, that sounds like electricity building up before a lightning strike. Emily dove behind a big rock just as bright blue energy beams cut through the air where her head had been a second before. The beams hit the rock and made it very hot right away. She could feel the stone getting hotter. The energy hit the rock and made it glow red. If you shot it a few more times like that, the boulder wouldn't give you any cover at all. She was stuck. There was no way out. The drones had her pinned down and they wouldn't miss for long. Emily leaned back against the rock and tried to calm her breathing. She thought her heart would burst because it was beating so hard. This was it. This was the end of her story. She would die on this mountain and no one would ever find out. No one would even know her name. Then something that shouldn't have happened happened. The ground shook under her. At first, Emily thought it was an earthquake. There weren't many earthquakes in Colorado, but her scared mind tried to figure out what was going on. But this wasn't an earthquake. The shaking was too focused and planned. It felt like huge machines were moving underground and waking up after a long sleep. Something even more impossible happened 20 yards in front of her. A part of the mountain's side started to break apart. She could hear the groan of old hydraulics and metal moving against metal after years of being still. Someone was opening a door. A huge, reinforced door that had been painted to look like the mountain's natural rock face. Emily didn't see anything strange because it was so well hidden. The door opened slowly, and the entrance to the mountain was dark. Somewhere inside, red emergency lights flashed, making everything look creepy. Emily could see a hallway that led down into the dark. This was it. This was Site 7 in Colorado. Instead of finding the place she was looking for, it found her. She didn't stop to think about whether this was a trap or if the place might be dangerous. The drones were right behind her, and she would rather die than what the Valtrine had planned for people they caught. Emily pushed herself up and ran toward the opening. Her tired legs got a new burst of strength from sheer desperation. The drones saw her moving and shot at her. There were energy beams cutting through the air all around her. She could feel the heat from the bullet that went so close to her left arm that it burned her skin. Another bullet hit the ground right in front of her and went off, sending dirt and rocks flying into her face. She tripped but kept going. Emily jumped through the hole in the mountain just as the big door was about to close. She fell hard on the floor and rolled and slid on the dusty concrete. The drones behind her shot at the door as it was closing. The energy blasts burned the entrance and left black marks on the steel, but the door was too thick and strong. It closed with a loud boom that echoed through the building. After that, there was silence. There was complete and total silence. Emily lay on the floor, which was cold, and gasped for air. She was shaking all over with adrenaline and tiredness. She had done it. She was still alive. For now. Her eyes slowly got used to the low light. It was clear that she was inside a military building. But no one had been here for a long time. There was dust on every surface, and it was so thick that her landing had made clouds that were still in the air. There were only emergency strips along the floor that gave off light. These strips are made to last for decades on very little power. But deeper in the building, Emily heard something that made her heart race for a different reason. A beep that goes in time with the music. The hum of machines that were still running and working. There was still life in this empty place. She got up and walked toward the sound. Now her desire to learn about science was stronger than her fear. The hallway went on, with empty offices and rooms full of old equipment along the sides. She walked by doors and peeked inside. Old computers from the early 2000s sat on desks, their screens dark and dead. The edges of the paper files were brittle and crumbling, and the paper itself had turned yellow with age. Coffee mugs were still where someone had left them 70 years ago, and they were full of what had once been coffee but was now just dried brown stuff. It was like going back in time. Everything was just as it had been when the building was left behind. Emily thought about the scientists and soldiers who had worked here and then just left one day and never came back. What were they doing that was so important that they needed to build this huge base underground? As she went down, the beeping got louder. She saw some stairs going down and followed them. 1 level lower. 2 levels. 3 levels deep inside the mountain. The building was a lot bigger than she thought it would be. How long did it take to put this place together? How much money did the government spend to build this secret base? Finally, on the 3rd level down, she came to a huge, strong door. This door was different from the others she had seen. It was built like a bank vault to keep something in or out. The computer console next to the door was still on, which was the only piece of modern technology she had seen that was still working. There was a bright green message on the screen that said, Project Titan Revival Sequence, 78% complete. Emily's hands shook as she reached for the console. Her scientist brain was yelling at her to think about what she was doing and be careful. But her desperate heart needed to know what was behind that door. She got to the terminal and easily moved her fingers over the keyboard. One after the other, files started to open on the screen. Medical records came first. Charts and graphs that show vital signs and biological data. Next came military evaluation reports that used words like combat efficiency and threat response capability. Then she saw files with the words genetic modification protocols on them, which made her eyes go wide. Next came the cybernetic integration schematics, which showed her diagrams of how technology and a human body could work together in ways she had never seen before. The dates on all the files were between 2023 and 2025. They all had the highest levels of security. And they were all about one person. Captain Jake Reynolds. As Emily read through the files, her shock and disbelief grew. Jake Reynolds was a soldier who signed up for a test program. The military wanted to make super soldiers, which are people who are stronger and better at fighting than anyone else. They had begun by changing his DNA to make everything work better. Strength went up to 3 times what a normal person can do. Speed and reflexes went beyond what should be possible for the body. The healing factor was boosted so that wounds would close in hours instead of days. But they didn't stop there. Neural implants had been put right into his brain. These implants made him faster at processing information, gave him perfect reflexes, and let him program combat protocols into his mind like software. Cybernetic systems had been added to his cells, making them so small and advanced that they became part of his body. He wasn't just better. He had become something that was almost not human anymore. The plan had worked. The files made it clear. Captain Reynolds had done better than anyone could have hoped for and passed every test with results that even the scientists who made him were shocked by. He could move faster, hit harder, think faster, and fight better than any other person who had ever lived. That was the exact problem. 47 minutes after Emily went inside, the Valtrine patrol showed up at the mountain. When the huge door to the building opened, their advanced sensor systems picked up the signal. In their command center in New York, alarms had gone off. Commander Vareth was not the kind of leader who ignored problems or took risks. He had sent Lieutenant Kress to look into it, and Kress had brought a whole squad with him. 12 Valtrine soldiers marched toward the secret entrance in the mountainside. They all had plasma rifles, the same kind of energy weapons that had cut through Earth's military like it was made of paper. They wore regular combat armor that could stop bullets and hold up to small explosions. Their helmets had advanced targeting systems and sensors that could see in the dark, tell where heat was coming from and follow movement through walls. For 3 months, this kind of squad had been more than enough to deal with any human resistance. Most of the time they faced scared refugees who had makeshift weapons or none at all. This should have been normal work. Lieutenant Kress led his men into the building with their guns drawn and ready. The red emergency lights on the floor made everything look scary, and the walls and ceiling were painted in shades of red. In this light, it would have been hard for people to see clearly. But Valtrine's eyes were different. They had evolved on a planet with 3 suns and could see light waves that humans couldn't even see. They didn't mind the dim red light at all. They carefully and methodically made their way through the upper levels of the building. This was normal for the military. They had done this kind of building clearing operation 1,000 times on a dozen different planets. 3 soldiers would go into a room while the others stayed outside to keep an eye on them. They would clean the area, make sure it was clear, and then go on to the next one. They kept finding the same thing in each room. Offices that are empty and full of dust. Old computer parts that hadn't been used in decades. Coffee cups still sitting on desks where people left them 70 years ago. Empty offices, one soldier said over the squad communication channel. There were file cabinets with yellowed paper documents inside. This place has been dead for years. There are no signs of recent activity. Keep going, Lieutenant Kress told them. He had been in the Valtrine military for 12 years and was a veteran officer. Before coming to Earth, he had fought in 4 different planetary invasions. He had great instincts and a great sense of strategy. He didn't know what it was about this situation that bothered him. Something made those doors open. Look for whatever it was. The team went deeper into the mountain base. They found the stairs and went down 1 level. Then there was another level. Then a 3rd level came. It looked like a small place from the outside, but it was much bigger. Kress was curious about how long it had taken the people to build this base and how much it had cost. Compared to the Valtrine, humans were pretty basic, but they could be very smart when they wanted to be. The noise from the machines got louder as they went deeper. After all these years, something down here was still running and doing things. Kress felt something strange moving in his mind. Not quite worried but close to it. For the first 3 months of living on Earth, humans were completely predictable. They were scared, weak, and quick to give up when they were confronted. They ran away and hid like animals that were being hunted. A few times, small groups tried to fight back with their old guns and bombs, but they were never a real threat. This felt different in some way. Kress couldn't say why, but his instincts told him to be careful in battle. They got to the bottom of the building where the laboratory level was. Kress could see inside the main lab through a big door with a strong window. In the middle of the room was a cryogenic chamber. The door was open and steam was still coming out of it. Frost covered the floor around it and slowly melted into puddles. There was no one in the room. Lieutenant, one of his soldiers called out from a monitoring station. Someone or something had been inside it recently. We see movement. Thermal sensors are picking up more than 1 heat signature. Further into the building beyond the lab. Kress smiled. In the end, this mission might be fun. The work had been boring for 3 months. People were too easy. They didn't really fight back, they just gave up. Today might be different. Pattern for a full sweep. Kill anything that moves. The 12-soldier squad did exactly what their tactical training told them to do. They split into 3 groups of 4. He was in charge of the center group himself. His helmet's thermal imaging system picked up 2 human heat signatures in the lower hallways ahead of him. One of the signatures was smaller and weaker, and it was probably a woman. The other one was bigger and stronger, and it was probably a man. They were both moving, but it looked like they were stuck in a dead end of the building. Corner them, Kress said over the radio. I want them to be alive so I can question them first. Command will want to know what this place was and why they came here. The three groups moved through the hallways with ease. They had done this kind of thing hundreds of times before. The people were stuck and couldn't get away. Cress's group got to what looked like an old armory, which is a room where weapons and gear used to be kept. His thermal imaging clearly showed both human signatures pressed against the far wall. Caught. Perfect. This would be done in a matter of seconds. The Valtrine squad moved into the armory with weapons raised, ready to capture their prey. Then all the lights in the building went out at once. Complete darkness fell. Night vision mode, Cress snapped immediately. His helmet display compensated for the darkness in a fraction of a second. The world turned into shades of green as the night vision activated. Everything became visible again, bathed in that distinctive green-tinted glow. But something was wrong. Cress looked at the far wall where the thermal signatures had been showing. The armory was empty. There were no humans there. The thermal signatures were gone too. Then he realized what had happened and felt a cold shock of understanding. The signatures had been decoys. Heating elements pulled from the facility's old air conditioning system and placed to look like human body heat. It had been a trap. Lieutenant Cress realized his mistake about a half-second before Captain Jake Reynolds dropped from the ceiling ventilation shaft directly above them. Jake had spent the last hour preparing for this moment. After Emily told him about the Valtrine invasion and what the aliens were capable of, he had immediately shifted into combat mode. His enhanced mind had studied the facility's layout, memorizing every corridor and room and air vent. He had armed himself from the old armory, finding weapons that still worked after 70 years of storage. He had questioned Emily extensively about everything she knew regarding the Valtrine. Their weapons, their armor, their tactics, their weaknesses. She had given him valuable tactical information. The Valtrine plasma rifles were powerful but had a specific recharge time between shots. Their armor was strong but had weak points at the joints where the plates connected. Their standard patrol formation always used the same three-group split pattern. They relied heavily on their technology and sensors, which made them vulnerable to simple tricks. Jake's enhanced mind had taken all that information and formulated a complete battle plan in minutes, something that would have taken a normal human tactical officer hours to work out. He had set the trap with the heating parts. He had put himself in the vent in the ceiling. He had waited with the patience of a predator for the Valtrine to walk right into his ambush. Now he hit. Jake fell from the vent and hit the first Valtrine soldier with the force of a boulder falling. His strength was 3 times that of a normal human, and it was so strong that it drove the alien soldier into the concrete floor, which broke under them. The force of the impact would have killed a normal person. The Valtrine was shocked and dropped his weapon. Jake's hand came up holding a combat knife he had taken from the armory. The blade was just old steel, nothing special about it. But in Jake's stronger hands and faster reflexes, it became a deadly weapon. He stabbed the alien in a weak spot in its armor that Emily had told him about. At the point where the neck plates and the chest piece came together. The blade went through and the Valtrine died without making a sound. Before the body hit the ground, Jake was already moving. His neural implants were processing the whole battle scene faster than he could think about it. His better brain took in everything. There are 12 enemies in total. A small, closed-in space with little room to move around. Their energy weapons gave them more firepower, but they were too sure of themselves and fell for his trap. He had the upper hand in tactics. The second Valtrine soldier turned around and tried to point his plasma rifle at the human threat that had come out of nowhere. Jake was quicker. A lot faster. He got closer to them in a blur of faster movement that the Valtrine's eyes could barely keep up with. Just as the soldier pulled the trigger, Jake grabbed the barrel of the plasma rifle. With his extra strength, he changed the direction of the weapon. Instead, the plasma blast hit a third Valtrine soldier. The superheated energy burned right through the alien's armor as if it were made of thin paper. Jake pulled the rifle away from the second soldier's grip, breaking the alien's finger in the process. He then broke the gun over his knee, breaking it into pieces. He used the broken pieces as makeshift stabbing weapons, stabbing them into weak spots in the Valtrine armor. Lieutenant Cress was finally able to get his own gun up and aimed. He shot at Jake and the plasma blast screamed through the air. But Jake acted like he could see the future. His combat protocols were so advanced that they could tell where shots would go based on small things like muscle tension and the angle of the weapon. Before Cress finished aiming, he already knew where Cress was going to hit. The plasma blast missed Jake by only a few inches. The shot made the air where Jake had been standing a microsecond before very hot, but Jake was already somewhere else. Jake picked up the plasma rifle from the first Valtrine soldier he had killed and bent down. He had never seen this kind of gun before. He had never used alien technology before because aliens didn't exist when he went into cryogenic sleep 70 years ago. But his improved neural implants were made to change and learn in real time while he was fighting. In less than a second, his brain figured out what the weapon was. Identified the firing mechanism. The amount of energy produced was calculated. Predicted recoil pattern. Best firing solutions made. His implants could even find the weak spots in Valtrine armor and figure out the best angles to shoot at. Jake shot at the aliens with the weapon he had taken from them. In 3 seconds, 3 more Valtrine soldiers died. Perfect headshots through the weak spots in their helmets. The other Valtrine soldiers ran away in a panic. They broke up their tactical formation and looked for cover, trying to set up some kind of defensive position. In less than 30 seconds they had gone from being sure hunters to scared prey. They had trained to fight primitive humans with guns and bombs. They weren't ready for this because of their training. People were supposed to be weak, slow, and easy to kill. This thing that was fighting them wasn't weak or slow. This was something they had never seen before, something completely new to them. Jake moved through them as if death itself had taken on a body. The news spread quickly through the few people who were still alive, like fire through dry grass. At first, no one could believe what they were hearing. It looked too good to be true, like it couldn't be real. There were dead Valtrine soldiers in Colorado. Not just 1 or 2 but a whole patrol. 12 alien warriors were killed or knocked out by someone or something the Valtrine couldn't figure out. The aliens were looking into what happened, and for the first time since the invasion started they looked confused. More than just confused. They looked mad and maybe even a little scared. People told each other the story in secret places. People who hadn't dared to hope for 3 months suddenly felt something moving inside them in dark basements and empty buildings. Valtrine had put thousands of captured humans in work camps. Prisoners whispered the rumor to each other when the guards weren't around. Survivors told the story through any communication networks they could find that the aliens couldn't find in the ruins of once great cities. Is it really true? Was there really someone who fought back against the Valtrine and won? Then more reports from other parts of the country came in, and the story got bigger. Somewhere in Nevada, a Valtrine supply convoy had been attacked. The whole convoy was destroyed with a level of accuracy and tactical skill that human guerrilla fighters hadn't shown in months. All of the vehicles were broken down or destroyed. All of the guards were killed. The supplies were stolen, and the thief disappeared like smoke before Valtrine reinforcements could get there. A communication center in Wyoming stopped working. Someone had hit it in the middle of the night, knowing exactly where to hit to do the most damage. The Valtrine worked quickly to fix it, but the person who attacked knew what they were doing. The hub was completely destroyed, cutting off communications between aliens and 3 states for 2 full days. A patrol unit in Montana just disappeared. They were supposed to check in with their command center at that time. The next moment there was nothing. When other Valtrine troops came to look into things, they found the patrol's gear left in a clearing. There was a certain way that the weapons, armor, and communication devices were set up. The Valtrine couldn't read the message, but everyone who heard about it right away understood. The equipment spelled out the words, "Not finished." People weren't done fighting. Not even close. The North American resistance had set up their makeshift headquarters in a subway tunnel that had been turned into a shelter deep beneath the ruins of Denver. It didn't look like much. There was dirt and old graffiti on the walls of the tunnel from before the invasion. The concrete floor was cracked and flooded when it rained. There were electric lights hanging from wires that ran along the ceiling. They were powered by a broken generator that coughed and sputtered but somehow kept going. There were 200 fighters who lived and worked at this base underground. That was all that was left of a resistance group that used to have thousands of members. They had taken weapons from abandoned military bases and dead soldiers. They made armor out of whatever they could find. Most importantly, they had hope that was quickly fading with each passing day. Colonel Tom Mitchell was their leader. He was a career military officer who had been lucky enough to survive the first invasion. His hair was gray and his face was lined with stress and tiredness. He was 53 years old. For 3 months he had been trying to get scattered resistance cells in North America to work together, but he hadn't had much luck. The Valtrine were too many, too strong, and too advanced. Every attack the resistance made resulted in a lot of deaths and little success. They were losing fighters faster than they could get new ones. When Emily Brooks walked into the underground base, Tom was in the command room looking at maps and reports. She wasn't by herself. There was a man with her, and as soon as Tom saw him, every instinct he had learned in 30 years of military service started to scream at him. There was something off about the man. Not in a clear way, but in small ways that Tom's trained eyes noticed right away. He moved with a grace that was too perfect and too controlled. Like a predator moving through tall grass, every step was steady and exact. His eyes were always moving around the room, taking in every detail and judging each person and possible threat. There was something strange about those eyes. They looked like they were glowing with a blue light that no human eyes should have. Tom's hand moved without thinking toward the gun at his side. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, his voice rough and suspicious. The stranger didn't move at all, even though Tom was standing in a threatening way. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. "Captain Jake Reynolds. Army of the United States." "Captain Reynolds has been dead for 70 years, Tom said sharply, cutting in. He knew about Project Titan. Every high-ranking military officer had heard rumors about the secret super soldier program that had been shut down decades ago. "I know the Project Titan files. That program was stopped and buried. It was put on hold," Jake said, his eyes never leaving Tom's face. "Termination and suspension are not the same thing. Colonel, I need your help. Just like you need mine." Tom's thoughts were racing. This couldn't be done. In 2025, Project Titan was shut down, and all of its records were hidden and classified. The program that made those super soldiers should have killed them off a long time ago. But there was a man in front of him who looked about 30 years old, moved in a way that Tom had never seen before, and said he was Jake Reynolds. Jake and Emily talked about everything that had happened over the next hour. They told Tom about the secret facility in the mountains of Colorado. About the emergency plans that had been put in place when the Valtrine attacked. Jake woke up after sleeping in cryogenic sleep for 70 years. About the Valtrine patrol that had come to look into things and how Jake had killed them all by himself in less than 4 minutes. Tom heard everything and thought about what it meant. He knew this was crazy, impossible, and too good to be true from his 30 years in the military. But his eyes told him something else. Jake Reynolds was right there, real and solid and not at all normal. "Even if you are everything the files say you are," Tom said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "you are still just one man. There are 10,000 Valtrine soldiers on Earth. They have ships in space that can destroy cities with their weapons. We can't even understand their technology, let alone match it. How much of a difference can one super soldier make against all of that?" Jake's face was as hard as stone. "How many resistance fighters did you have under your command 3 months ago?" Tom's jaw felt like it was getting tighter. He didn't like how this was going. 2,000. Give or take. "And now?" Jake asked, but the way he said it made it sound like he already knew the answer. Tom's fists tightened. 200. The others are either dead, in prison, or hiding because they gave up. "Exactly," Jake said. "You've been acting like this is a normal war between two armies. The Valtrine are ready for that kind of fight. They have taken over planets before Earth. They know exactly how lower species act when they lose. Resistance that is spread out. Desperation. Feeling hopeless. And finally give up. And you have a better idea?" Tom asked, his voice full of anger. For 3 months, he had been fighting this impossible war and watching good people die every day. "They don't know anything about my 70 years of military experience," Jake said. His voice was sure of itself but not cocky. "The project that made me was based on secret research from 2025. The Valtrine have been watching Earth's public broadcasts and communications for 60 years. But they don't know about the research into secret weapons. They don't know about the new tactical ideas that were being worked on in secret programs. They don't know about advanced fighting skills that were never made public. And they definitely don't know who I am or what I can do." Jake went to a big map of the western United States that was spread out on a table that wasn't really a table. His improved mind had already remembered every detail of the map, including every road, city, and landmark. He went on, pointing to different places. "The Valtrine are full of themselves. They think they know people because they watched our TV shows and public military demonstrations. But they don't know what makes us dangerous as a species." "And what is that?" Tom asked, really interested now even though he didn't believe it. Jake said, "We change faster than any other species they have ever conquered." His eyes were bright and intense. "We learn from our mistakes. We come up with new ideas and find ways to solve problems that seem impossible. And most importantly, we won't give up, even when every logical calculation tells us to." He pointed to different places on the map. "Check out their plan for occupation. They have ways to get supplies here, here, and here. Command posts in all the big cities. Communication hubs that run on schedules that are always the same. They are using occupation tactics that work on species that give up once they are beaten." Jake looked up and saw Tom's eyes. "But they have never had to deal with a species like humans. A species that would rather die than give up. A species that will fight with sticks and rocks if that's all we have left. Jake did something that no resistance leader had been able to do in 3 months of trying over the next 7 days. He gave people back something they had lost when the Valtrine ships first showed up in the sky. He gave them hope. Jake taught Tom's 200 fighters personally, spending hours every day showing them new moves. They didn't know these were the usual military strategies. Jake showed them how to use his better knowledge of Valtrine's weaknesses to mix old-fashioned guerrilla warfare with new ideas. He taught them how to move around without being seen by alien sensors. He told them how to find and take advantage of holes in Valtrine's patrol patterns. He showed how to use the enemy's own weapons and equipment as bombs and traps to turn their better technology against them. Jake showed everyone how to do things, which was more important than the training. He went on missions himself, hitting Valtrine positions with a level of accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. He moved like a ghost through enemy-controlled land, hitting supply convoys and communication hubs and then disappearing before the enemy could react. Every mission was carefully planned to do more than just hurt people. It was also meant to send a message. Jake left survivors on purpose. Valtrine soldiers who were scared ran back to their commanders and told wild stories about a person who was not a person, who moved faster than their sensors could follow, and who fought in ways they couldn't explain. The aliens had thought for 3 months that humans were weak, primitive, and easy to control. They were learning to be scared now. The psychological effects were strong and immediate. For 3 months, Valtrine patrols had been relaxed and sure of themselves. Then all of a sudden they became careful and scared. They began to travel in bigger groups. They stopped going to some places. They asked for backup and more troops for missions they would have done by themselves in the past. The hunters who had been terrorizing people for 3 months were now learning what it was like to be the prey. Resistance groups all over North America started to notice the same changes in Valtrine's behavior. The occupation forces were moving away from the outskirts and gathering around their main command posts. They were sending urgent requests for more troops from their home planets. Their arrogant confidence since the invasion was fading, and they were now afraid and unsure. And with each little win Jake had, more people were brave enough to join the fight. People who had been hiding in basements and ruins heard the stories and chose to stop running. After months of losing, fighters who had given up started to believe again. "Exactly," Jake said. "You've been acting like this is a normal war between 2 armies. The Valtrine are ready for that kind of fight. They have taken over planets before Earth. They know exactly how lower species act when they lose. Resistance that is spread out. Desperation. Feeling hopeless. And finally give up. And you have a better idea?" Tom asked, his voice full of anger. For 3 months, he had been fighting this impossible war and watching good people die every day. "They don't know anything about my 70 years of military experience," Jake said. His voice was sure of itself but not cocky. "The project that made me was based on secret research from 2025. The Valtrine have been watching Earth's public broadcasts and communications for 60 years. But they don't know about the research into secret weapons. They don't know about the new tactical ideas that were being worked on in secret programs. They don't know about advanced fighting skills that were never made public. And they definitely don't know who I am or what I can do." Jake went to a big map of the western United States that was spread out on a table that wasn't really a table. His improved mind had already remembered every detail of the map, including every road, city, and landmark. He went on, pointing to different places. "The Valtrine are full of themselves. They think they know people because they watched our TV shows and public military demonstrations. But they don't know what makes us dangerous as a species." "And what is that?" Tom asked, really interested now even though he didn't believe it. Jake said, "We change faster than any other species they have ever conquered." His eyes were bright and intense. "We learn from our mistakes. We come up with new ideas and find ways to solve problems that seem impossible. And most importantly, we won't give up, even when every logical calculation tells us to." He pointed to different places on the map. "Check out their plan for occupation. They have ways to get supplies here, here, and here. Command posts in all the big cities. Communication hubs that run on schedules that are always the same. They are using occupation tactics that work on species that give up once they are beaten." Jake looked up and saw Tom's eyes. "But they have never had to deal with a species like humans. A species that would rather die than give up. A species that will fight with sticks and rocks if that's all we have left." Jake did something that no resistance leader had been able to do in 3 months of trying over the next 7 days. He gave people back something they had lost when the Valtrine ships first showed up in the sky. He gave them hope. Jake taught Tom's 200 fighters personally, spending hours every day showing them new moves. They didn't know these were the usual military strategies. Jake showed them how to use his better knowledge of Valtrine's weaknesses to mix old-fashioned guerrilla warfare with new ideas. He taught them how to move around without being seen by alien sensors. He told them how to find and take advantage of holes in Valtrine's patrol patterns. He showed how to use the enemy's own weapons and equipment as bombs and traps to turn their better technology against them. Jake showed everyone how to do things, which was more important than the training. He went on missions himself, hitting Valtrine positions with a level of accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. He moved like a ghost through enemy-controlled land, hitting supply convoys and communication hubs and then disappearing before the enemy could react. Every mission was carefully planned to do more than just hurt people. It was also meant to send a message. Jake left survivors on purpose. Valtrine soldiers who were scared ran back to their commanders and told wild stories about a person who was not a person, who moved faster than their sensors could follow, and who fought in ways they couldn't explain. The aliens had thought for 3 months that humans were weak, primitive, and easy to control. They were learning to be scared now. The psychological effects were strong and immediate. For 3 months, Valtrine patrols had been relaxed and sure of themselves. Then all of a sudden they became careful and scared. They began to travel in bigger groups. They stopped going to some places. They asked for backup and more troops for missions they would have done by themselves in the past. The hunters who had been terrorizing people for 3 months were now learning what it was like to be the prey. Resistance groups all over North America started to notice the same changes in Valtrine's behavior. The occupation forces were moving away from the outskirts and gathering around their main command posts. They were sending urgent requests for more troops from their home planets. Their arrogant confidence since the invasion was fading, and they were now afraid and unsure. And with each little win Jake had, more people were brave enough to join the fight. People who had been hiding in basements and ruins heard the stories and chose to stop running. After months of losing, fighters who had given up started to believe again. Commander Vareth stood in the command center of the huge orbital station that was floating high above Earth. The station was a great example of Valtrine engineering, with technology that humans could hardly imagine. But Vareth wasn't impressed with the technology at the moment. He was looking at the tactical displays with a growing sense of dread that felt like a living thing in his stomach. There were red warning markers all over the holographic map of Earth that was floating in front of him. Each red marker stood for an attack on the Valtrine forces. There were a lot of them. In the last 3 days alone, there have been 47 attacks. Supply trucks destroyed on highways and mountain roads. Communication hubs going down without any warning. Coordinated attacks wiped out outposts that had been safe for months. But the number of attacks didn't bother Vareth the most. The reports were always the same, which bothered him. Every single event, whether it happened in California, Maine, Texas, or Montana, said the same thing. A person they had never met before. Faster than any person should be. Humans were stronger than their records showed. They were very good at fighting, which seemed impossible for such a simple species. He was always scared by the same description. "It's just one person," Governor Thane said from across the command center, not caring. 3 days ago, the regional governor arrived on the command ship. He had been called all the way from the Valtrine core worlds to look into the worsening situation on Earth. His voice was full of anger and contempt. "You've let one simple creature scare your whole army. This is unacceptable, Commander. Your work has been a disgrace to the Empire." Varetha's jaw tightened, but he spoke in a calm and professional way. "With all due respect, Governor, this is not a normal person we are dealing with. My intelligence officers have looked at the attack patterns and capabilities and think it is some kind of enhanced soldier. A genetic experiment that the humans made before we got here. The capabilities described in the field reports are far beyond what a normal person can do. We should ask the home fleet for more troops too. Extra troops." Governor Thane's voice was sharp and dangerous, like a knife cutting through the air. "Do you want to ask for more troops to deal with one planet full of primitives? Do you know what that would mean for your career, Commander? Do you know what it would do to the Empire's reputation if word got out that we needed help to control one backward planet?" Thane stepped closer to the tactical displays, his eyes cold and hard. "No. We won't ask for help. Instead, we'll make an example that these people will never forget. Get the bombardment platforms ready right away." Varetha's throat felt tight with fear. He knew exactly what the governor was trying to say, and the thought of it made him sick. "Governor, the civilian deaths from orbital bombardment would be huge. Millions of people would die. The Empire has rules about. The deaths will be necessary," Thane said coldly, cutting in. "We will destroy their 3 largest remaining population centers, Washington, Moscow, and Beijing. When the humans see their cities turn to radioactive ash and millions of their own kind die in nuclear fire, this enhanced soldier of yours won't matter anymore. The survivors will remember their place in the natural order and understand that resistance is pointless and expensive. Before Valrath could say anything else, he was told to leave. Valtrine ships in the fleet started to move into attack positions. The bombardment platforms, which are huge weapons platforms made to destroy things on the surface of planets, turned on their main weapons. These were weapons that could turn whole cities into smoking craters. Weapons that could kill millions in a matter of seconds. The attack was set for dawn. In just a few hours, 3 of the biggest cities on Earth would be gone. What neither Commander Valrath nor Governor Thane knew, what they could not possibly have known, was that Captain Jake Reynolds was already aboard their command ship. He had been there for hours, moving through the corridors like a ghost, completely invisible to their sensors and guards. Jake had made the journey from Earth to the orbital station in a captured Valtrine shuttle. Emily had managed to extract access codes from the equipment of the destroyed patrol back in Colorado. Those codes had gotten him past the outer security checkpoints. His enhanced biology had adapted to the harsh radiation of space travel, something that would have killed a normal human in minutes. His cybernetic systems had compensated for the hostile environment, keeping him alive and functional. He had docked the shuttle at a maintenance bay where security was lighter. Then he had moved through the ship's corridors with the patience and skill of a predator stalking prey. His enhanced senses detected guard patrols long before they could see him. His combat training told him exactly where to hide and when to move. He had been waiting in the shadows of the command center's upper level for over an hour now, watching and listening and planning his next move with his enhanced tactical mind. And far below on Earth, every resistance cell across the planet was moving into position for the largest coordinated attack humanity had ever attempted. Colonel Tom Mitchell stood in a bombed-out office building in New York City, just 3 blocks away from the Valtrine Command Center that had been built in the ruins of what used to be the United Nations headquarters. Around him, 200 fighters checked their weapons and prepared themselves mentally for what might be their final battle. These were ordinary people who had become warriors out of necessity. Teachers and accountants and factory workers who now carried guns and knew how to use them. Similar scenes were playing out all across the planet at that exact moment. In London, resistance fighters gathered in the underground tunnels beneath the city. In Berlin and Paris, human insurgents prepared their weapons and said quiet prayers. In Beijing, Moscow, and Tokyo, brave men and women got ready to strike back against the occupation force that had crushed their world. In hundreds of smaller cities and towns across every continent, humans who had been broken and subjugated for 3 months were remembering what it meant to fight for their freedom. Every single resistance cell had received the same encrypted message just hours before. Dawn. Simultaneous. Everything. It was time to show the Valtrine that humanity was not finished. Not even close. Tom checked his watch nervously. 5 minutes until sunrise. 5 minutes until the largest gamble in human history. If this worked, they might actually drive the aliens off their planet. If it failed, the Valtrine would crush them completely and there would be no more resistance left to fight. His radio crackled with static and then Jake's voice came through, calm and steady despite the impossible danger he was in. All teams, this is Sierra 1. Strike authorization is yours. Reynolds out. Tom took a deep breath and looked at the faces of the men and women around him. Scared faces. Determined faces. The faces of people who had decided that dying free was better than living as slaves. You heard the man, Tom said, his voice firm and clear. Let's remind these bastards whose planet they're on. Dawn broke across Earth in a wave of golden light moving from east to west. The sun rose over cities that had once been centers of human civilization and were now occupied territories under alien control. And humanity struck back with everything they had. In New York, Tom's resistance fighters emerged from their hiding places and hit the Valtrine Command Center from 3 different directions at exactly the same moment. Homemade explosives blew holes in the outer walls. Stolen plasma rifles cut down surprised guards. Humans who had been running and hiding for 3 months suddenly became an attacking force. In London, coordinated attacks overwhelmed Valtrine patrols that had grown lazy and complacent. The aliens had stopped expecting resistance. They had stopped being careful. That mistake cost them dearly as British fighters struck with rage and precision. In Berlin and Paris, insurgents destroyed communication hubs that the Valtrine depended on for coordination. In Beijing, Moscow, and Tokyo, brave fighters sacrificed themselves in suicide attacks that took out key alien installations. In hundreds of smaller cities and towns across Africa, South America, Australia, and Asia, humans who had been subjugated remembered what it meant to fight back. The Valtrine response was pure chaos. Every single position they held on Earth was under attack at the same time. Their communication networks were being jammed or destroyed. Supply lines that had operated smoothly for months were suddenly cut. Soldiers who had been confident occupiers, who had spent 3 months treating humans like harmless animals, were suddenly fighting for their lives against an enemy they had completely dismissed as harmless. On the command ship high above Earth, alarm sirens blared across every system. Red warning lights flashed throughout the station. Commander Vareth stared at the tactical displays in complete disbelief. His mind could barely process what he was seeing. Every single Valtrine position on the entire planet was under assault simultaneously. Hundreds of coordinated attacks happening at exactly the same moment. How? Governor Thane demanded, his voice shrill with shock and anger. How did they coordinate this? We destroyed their communication networks. We monitored everything. How did they organize an attack of this scale? It does not matter how they did it, Vareth said, his military training overriding his shock and fear. His hands moved across the control console, issuing orders rapidly. All ships, move to attack formation immediately. Begin bombardment of primary targets right now. We will break their will to fight. We will show them the price of resistance. I am afraid I cannot let you do that. Every single Valtrine in the command center spun around toward the voice. It had come from the shadows of the upper-level observation deck. A figure stepped into the light, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. Captain Jake Reynolds emerged from his hiding place with a captured plasma rifle held ready in his hands. His enhanced eyes glowed with that distinctive blue light in the dim illumination of the command center. Guards! Governor Thane bellowed, his voice filled with rage and fear. Kill it! Kill that thing right now! 20 Valtrine soldiers who had been stationed around the command center opened fire instantly. 20 plasma rifles discharged at once, filling the air with deadly energy beams that could vaporize a human body in a fraction of a second. Jake moved. Every single Valtrine in the command center spun around toward the voice. It had come from the shadows of the upper-level observation deck. A figure stepped into the light, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. Captain Jake Reynolds emerged from his hiding place with a captured plasma rifle held ready in his hands. His enhanced eyes glowed with that distinctive blue light in the dim illumination of the command center. Guards! Governor Thane bellowed, his voice filled with rage and fear. Kill it! Kill that thing right now! 20 Valtrine soldiers who had been stationed around the command center opened fire instantly. 20 plasma rifles discharged at once, filling the air with deadly energy beams that could vaporize a human body in a fraction of a second. Jake moved. His enhanced reflexes made the world seem to slow down around him. He could actually see the plasma bolts traveling through the air, bright streaks of superheated energy moving in slow motion. His combat protocols calculated their trajectories automatically, showing him exactly where each shot would go. His enhanced body moved between the deadly beams like water flowing between rocks. 7 quick steps forward. A roll to the left. A slide to the right. Come up firing. He reached the first guard in exactly 2 seconds and disarmed him with a lightning-fast strike that shattered the alien's wrist bones. Jake grabbed the guard's weapon before it hit the floor and used it to eliminate 3 more guards with perfect headshots. Plasma fire filled the entire command center, energy beams crossing the space in every direction, but Jake was always 1 step ahead. His enhanced mind was processing the combat scenario faster than any opponent could possibly react. In 30 seconds flat, every guard in the command center was down, dead or unconscious. Commander Vareth backed away slowly, his hand reaching for the sidearm at his hip. Jake shot the weapon out of his grip without killing him, the plasma blast so precisely aimed it only destroyed the gun. You, Vareth breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. You are the enhanced human. The one from all the reports. Captain Jake Reynolds, Jake confirmed calmly. United States Army. And you are going to send new orders to your fleet right now. Stand down. Withdraw from Earth immediately. Governor Thane laughed, a harsh and grating sound that held no humor at all. You think 1 soldier can change the outcome of this war? Even if you kill both of us right here, the Empire will send more ships. More soldiers. Earth will burn to ash. Jake's expression was cold as ice. Maybe you are right. Maybe the Empire will send more forces eventually. But you will not live to see it happen. He moved to the main command console, his enhanced mind rapidly processing the alien interface. Emily had taught him the basics of Valtrine computer systems back in Denver, and his neural implants filled in the rest. Within seconds he had accessed the ship's main communications array. Attention all Valtrine forces, Jake's voice broadcast across every communication channel in the entire fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every commander heard his words. This is Captain Jake Reynolds of Earth. Your commanders have been defeated. Your invasion has failed completely. You have exactly 1 hour to evacuate this planet, or I will show you exactly what humanity is truly capable of when you threaten our home. To emphasize his point and prove he was not bluffing, Jake activated the command ship's main weapon systems. He aimed carefully and fired a single devastating shot. Not at Earth, but at the nearest Valtrine bombardment platform floating in orbit. The massive energy beam cut through the platform's shields like they were made of paper and destroyed it in a brilliant explosion that was visible from the planet's surface below. That is one, Jake said calmly into the communication system. You have 13 more bombardment platforms in orbit. I can destroy every single one before your fleet can stop me. And after that I am coming for your ships. One by one. Starting with the largest. On Earth far below, humans watching the sky saw the explosion. They saw fire blooming in orbit. They saw a Valtrine ship firing on its own bombardment platform. And they understood what it meant. Reynolds had done it. He had actually taken control of the alien command ship. The tide of battle turned in that single moment. Valtrine soldiers across the planet, already panicking from the coordinated attacks, now faced human fighters who were emboldened by hope and victory. The resistance pressed their advantage hard. Humans who had been cowering and hiding for months emerged to join the fight. The occupation that had seemed absolutely unbreakable was breaking.